Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. This is Mike.
And this is Gary.
And this is Daniel.
The delay we just experienced is that we're calling in from three separate places around the country. That's pretty remarkable technology. Good to be here in three different locations.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty cool.
Wherever
tonight we're going to, yeah, I'm going to address an email that we just received. It's from Kevin. So I'll read this real fast. Hello, 12 Step Podcast. My name is Kevin. I've been in recovery for 7 years now. Congratulations, Kevin. That's fantastic. I'm grateful to say that I haven't had any relapses. My life is in a really good place. My relationship with my wife and kids is strong, and overall, things are going well. That said, I'm reaching out because I'm feeling a bit stuck. After years of working a very structured recovery, 12-step meetings, therapy, addiction recovery programs, I've found that now that those aren't a daily part of my life, I'm starting to flounder. There's no crisis, no major issue, but I can feel the complacency creeping in. I'm not experiencing the same kind of growth I once was, and I miss that sense of forward momentum in my recovery. I guess I'm looking for guidance or direction. How do you keep evolving in recovery when the major struggles are behind you, but you don't want to coast or go stagnant? I want to keep showing up, not just for my sobriety, but for my personal spirit and spiritual growth. Thanks for the podcast and all that you share. I'd appreciate any insight or experiences you can offer. Thank you, Kevin, for this is a great topic. I think this is a fantastic topic, partly because everybody on this podcast has a handful of years of clean time, and so I think we've all probably experienced this at some level.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this is a great topic. So let's just throw it out. Gary, I mean, you've probably got you definitely have the longest amount of clean time. What have you done to prevent complacency falling into your recovery?
Well, some things that I found is that my recovery, just like my addiction was dynamic, so does my recovery also need to be dynamic. And, there were a couple of times that I had to accept that there were certain elements of recovery that I want to say that I outgrew. I mean, even when I started therapy, and I was doing weekly therapy and things like that, I was told, there's going to come a point in time where we want you to grow past this. This is not something that you should need for the rest of your life. I know it might seem kind of strange that and as my recovery grew, I had to continue to work my steps, but I had to find different ways of implementing them into my life, or find new ways to apply them. The podcast is a really, really good example of something that I've done that was out of what my normal routine was when I started.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the way that I help people is a little bit different now, but I still need to reach out and help them. So, at least my recovery needed to be dynamic and changing as my needs changed and as the person that I was changed, and as I started recovering these different aspects of my life, things started to need to look different. But I'm still involved to one degree or another in that kind of stuff. But I think you need to find a way to keep it an active part of your life, even though it will look different as you go through it.
I think he brings up an interesting point. I mean, just in listening to this sentence, after years of working a very structured recovery, 12-step meetings, therapy, addiction recovery programs, there's no doubt about it. I think we estimated at one time, very early on in our path, that this was a part-time job, at least 20 hours a week kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
I don't. That kind of intensity is sort of the 3 to 5 year kind of an idea. But no doubt about it, it should be expected to taper off. This is not intended to be that kind of a thing. So, but there, so just like in a lot of cases, sort of auto maintenance, right? I mean, in a lot of cases, things once you get the big problem sort of resolved, it's just tires and oil after that, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so I think that's the way, to some extent. I mean, that's way oversimplifying it, but it is expected to taper off. But I think you hit it right on the head, Gary. I think this is a pay it forward program. This really is with the intention that if you found that kind of clean time in your life, there are you can point your wagon in any direction and find somebody who has not found that kind of success, and they need some help. So anything you can do to reach out and help others and to participate, sponsoring, mentoring, any of those things. And the difference, obviously, we've talked about the difference between sponsors and mentors, but there are therapists around that would love your insight. There are 12-step programs that obviously have sponsoring programs going on, and those are great ways to keep very active and involved in the movement of recovery.
You can take different roles also in the things that you're involved in. Depending on what your experience is with your 12-step group or things like that, you can take a much more active role in, I don't know, leadership or organizing or helping others. Or quite honestly, if you're feeling those roles already, then it might be the time for you to step back a little bit and let other people step up and fill those, and then mentor them through those leadership roles. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. That's a great point. I think also, one of the things we've talked about is a morning routine, something that allows you to read material, recovery material, for instance. The difference is now is that maybe you're just reading something different. So you're keeping sort of the same path, maintaining the idea that you have a morning routine, but now you've moved to something that's a little different read. Maybe it's the variety of different therapy books that are out there, not therapy, but self-help kind of books, like and there are a variety of them. Some of my favorite, The Happiness Trap. It's a great book that's really just sort of intended to really identify some of the loose ends that we have in our lives and what happiness is really all about or not about. Those are great things.
Yeah.
Those are great things.
You can start creating recovery material.
Oh, yeah.
Exploring different opportunities that way. There's a lot of different ways that your recovery can start looking different. I remember, this is going to sound kind of strange, but the car accident that I was in forced me to take a step back. I was really, really involved in the 12-step program that we organized, that 12-step group,
Yes.
And I was mentoring just about every single recovery group that our counselor had going on, the Sage 1 and Sage 2, and I was just super heavily involved in all of that. And something that was interesting to me, and it was kind of an interesting wake-up call, was the accident put me in a situation where I couldn't do any of those things for a number of months, and I had to take a step back. But it was interesting for me to discover, and this is a special kind of arrogance on my part, but that these things could go on without me, and in a very real way needed to. And the reality of it is that all of those things as big a part as I was in getting like the 12-step program started, or even encouraging our counselor to do a Sage 2 group or to do a Sage 3 group, those things have grown way past any kind of contributions that I've done. But it made me realize that over the course of my life, my recovery is going to look very different. And right now, what I do to stay in my recovery looks very different than what it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 2 years ago.
Right.
Well, and
I
mine
was just
was
thinking to myself also. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
no problem.
I would. I was just thinking also that 12 steps. The 12-step program is an individual program, but there are other steps of 12 step as well. There are steps. Listen to me. There are other programs. There's a husband and wife 12-step program that one could participate in. I mean, it sounds like his relationship with his wife is going very, very well. But I remember something that you'd mentioned to me that Gary, that stuck with me a long time, and that is that my wife developed some amount of crazy to deal with my crazy. So there's no doubt about it that even working on marriage-related items in the 12-step program collectively together could be a beneficial thing. So just because the 12 steps have been so powerful in our own personal life doesn't necessarily mean that's the end, I guess is the point. There are other places to go with the spouse.
Yeah. Well, and what I was going to add is, when I started, I was going to therapy 4 to 5 days a week and doing the 12-step once a week. But slowly, year after year, that has slowly come down to now here I'm at, narrowly, I mean, it's been 5 years, but, I'm getting finally to that 5-year mark of sobriety in that. I only go in now for routine maintenance, routine checkups, like you said, like an oil change. But I'm still doing stuff in recovery every day, whether that is, and it doesn't have to be like, man, I'm doing 12-step work or I'm reading a recovery book. It could be as simple as, wow, I forgot that I used to love rollerblading, or I forgot that I used to love painting, and I start doing that again. I pick that up. Like, I got an extra 30 minutes. I'm going to paint something. Those things that we've lost because of our addiction, that's still forward momentum in my eyes, and it has really helped me to reclaim and recover those parts of me that I've lost due to my addiction. And that's that forward momentum. It sounds like he's losing. He's just kind of floating at the top of the pool now. So I would say, what are things that you quit doing? Did you used to love going fishing and you don't do it anymore? Maybe it's time to go fishing. Is there something from your past that you used to enjoy that you no longer do, that maybe it's time to pick that back up?
Right, something healthy. In fact, that's one of the recovery goals that I have, and I may have already mentioned it. That something that I used to do that I really, really enjoyed was building and painting models and things like that. And I have grandkids that are about that age now, and I've thought to myself, I want to recover that. I'm going to very intentionally, and in a healthy way, find a way to incorporate that hobby into my life.
That's fantastic.
I think that's a great point. Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic point, Daniel. That really is. That's literally what recovery is all about. Is recovering the life that we once, we should have had or could have had. So, yeah, there's no doubt about it that addiction took an awful lot of things from us. So, finding those things and maybe even picking up something that we didn't do before, finding a new hobby. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's fascinating to me is I find myself, some of those what I would consider to be middle circle things that I find myself where I'm stressing over something like that. Well, stress is a universal experience, right? Every one of us experience stress somehow in our life. So now what I try and focus on is things that can calm me down. So if I get stressed up, one of the things I like to do is go pound on a piano for a minute. I'm not good. But I would love to learn to be able to play the piano well, because one of the things about it is it's one of those things that takes me completely out of my mindset of what's actually going on, and yet I can spend some time with that, maybe an hour or something like that, and find myself in a different place mood-wise. That's all recovery-related stuff. So it may not be something that we gave up. It may be something even brand new.
Yeah.
Again, brilliant.
And then
it could be.
Oh, I was going to say, my other question is, yes, I noticed he said he's done 12-step work, but is he sponsoring anyone? Is he looking for opportunities in his neighborhood or even in his family? I mean, how many of us have ran into someone that we've known that has been struggling with this addiction, but has been doing it, in silence, and then we find out that they do it. We can help them out, guide them, talk to them, let them know they're not alone. Maybe reach out, or not reach out, but have your feelers out to pick up on those things, to find if, maybe there's someone in one of your inner circles, whether that's the most closest or the furthest out, that might benefit from some of the knowledge you've had from the length of your sobriety and how things are going so well with your wife and what you've been through.
He makes an observation here. He says, there's two things. He says, I can feel complacency creeping in, and my automatic response to that is that may not necessarily be a bad thing. It may be just coming off of the level of intensity that you were at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But then he says, I'm not experiencing the same kind of growth I once was, and I miss that sense of forward momentum in my recovery. I don't believe, at least in my own experience, that the momentum at which we had when we first started. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up. I don't believe the momentum that we experienced when we first started recovery is the same kind of momentum that we would experience in the latter part or in sort of the later years of our recovery. It was big strides of recovery to overcome our addictive behaviors as we first started. But at this point in time, it's more of a routine maintenance. It's more of a checkup. It's more of a what can I do and they're small incremental things. I don't find the monumental experience like I once did. And so I think that's fairly normal. I think what he's experiencing, in my mind anyway, is very normal.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. The other thing is that as you go through recovery, you need to learn to start measuring success a little bit differently too.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
And you struggle so hard to break old habits and create new ones, and learning to maintaining those habits from day to day, it becomes commonplace. But that discipline is necessary, and it's a measure of success. The other thing is that I think we get so used to living as an addict, you get so used to living your life with such a high amount of anxiety or drama or problems or being overwhelmed that when you find serenity, you have to learn to live there.
Yes.
It's a very different paced kind of a way to exist. And if you're not used to living that way, if you're not used to, you can sit around and think, am I doing something wrong or different, or but that's one of the things I still continue to marvel at, is how, in a very real way, how low drama my life has become.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's easy to mistake that for am I being stagnant, or is just maintaining this equilibrium just because you start to get better at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was
that
was kind of one of my questions. Was, because how intense things was for him was, because you're probably having a lot of dopamine spikes and stuff like that because you're doing things here and doing things there. That now that he's kind of got to that mellow place, that place of serenity and peace, like you were saying, that maybe things feel like he's stagnant, but reality, he's maintaining the new status quo, but he still has that forward momentum because, just like in space, when you get that blast off, you're still moving.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I was just thinking of the three circles for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very distinct moment in my life. I remember where we used that middle circle as though that was sort of this is a warning track, right? Remember, the outer circle is this place where life is good, and then we find ourselves in middle circle living, and we always looked at it with seriousness, like, what's going to happen if I don't turn this around, because I'm going to find myself then in inner circle, and I certainly don't want to be there because that's a complete relapse. And then there was this very clear, distinct day where I remember thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, I'm in middle circle living. I want to get to outer circle living because that's where life is really good. And I think that's the point here also is that we may have spent so much time in recovery and recovery-related tools that we were always concerned about hitting that inner circle. The reality of it is that now it's a change of focus to say, what do I need to do to get me back to outer circle living, because that's where things are blissful for me. And I think that's that's going to be a level of maturity that maybe he's arrived at or maybe not. I don't know, but that's part of recovery, is every day saying, "Oh, I slipped into middle circle living, and here are the things that I know what they are." And in my world, it's a very distinct universe. I know when I'm living in middle circle, but I know what I need to do to get back out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key to recovery, is to say, okay, when that warning has gone away and I've resolved the issue in my life, I'm now living back in that place where I feel really good. Things are very good with my wife. Things are back on an equilibrium with my kids. My job seems to be going well. Everything seems to be put in harmony. That's what we call it. That is kind of that harmony place again. That's recovery.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to ever. I'm going to temper what I'm going to say with the idea that I never want to run around thinking that I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof and can never, slip up or fall back or anything like that. But
right.
At the same time, I got to think how to say this. I'm much better at things than I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not white knuckling it all the time anymore. It's much easier to make it through the day,
Yes.
And that grows, and there eventually comes a point in time where it's like, it doesn't even occur to me to do those kind of things because I'm so busy with what I'm doing and, eventually, you're recovering your life, and then recovery is less about what you are avoiding or overcoming and more about, okay, now what am I going to do with the richness that's been given me, and how do I pay that forward? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does completely. Yeah, it does. And I think that's relevant. I really do. I think that's completely relevant. I think those are some big issues. The other piece of it, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than seeing somebody you've been working with find the same piece that you've discovered in your life. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal to help somebody else along the path. So I think that's a very normal place for somebody with that kind of experience and that kind of result in his own recovery. That would be a very natural place, I think, for him to then help out. So, well, any other thoughts?
I don't know. Enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a great. That's actually a great thought. So much of our acting out behavior was a miserable experience. Just relish in the recovery of it all too. That's a big deal. Celebrate it. Enjoy it.
I don't know if this comparison is a good one or not, but I'm going to compare it a little bit to finances or money. And when I was in my recovery, I was in debt. I'm speaking figuratively now. I was in debt. I wasn't making any money. Things were crazy, all of this kind of stuff. But as I've gone through recovery, my debts have been paid. My income has increased. I'm now starting to save money. I'm now starting to invest money, And so the measures of success look different. It might feel different because I no longer have the pressure of debt hanging over me,
Yes.
And now the pressures of meeting my bills are gone. And now I have the resources that I can start stretching out and enjoying different things or exploring new avenues. I don't know if that's a great analogy, a recovery currency, so to speak, but you have a finite amount of resources and energy, and the reality of this is that the resources and energy that I was wasting in my addiction, I've now recovered, and I now have those resources to start applying to other places.
Yeah.
And you need to learn to, how to invest that or to pay it forward, steps 10, 11, and 12 are lifelong kind of things, but those come into even kind of a maintenance kind of a thing. If you're constantly doing, 10, you start making fewer and, better and better life choices, then the corrections that you need to make are smaller in theory, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Ideally.
that's right.
I don't what
I
I
will say this, as far as his complacency go, the one thing he wants to be very careful of is that he knows where his weak spots are at, right? With me, it was always travel. And so, I have a safety plan in place when I travel, and that safety plan comes up every single time I travel, so that I know exactly what I'm dealing with and how I'm handling that and where, what's happening with that. So, um, I would assume he'd be doing the exact same thing. He knows. It's fascinating as I listen to our common counselor's experience in dealing with alcohol. I think that's fascinating as he talks about, the places he goes where alcohol is served and what he needs to do. Just a trip to the bathroom includes taking somebody with him as he walks past the bar section of the places he's at. That's fascinating to me, and that's after 30 plus years of recovery, 35 years of recovery. So that's part of a recovery experience as well. We start talking about complacency. We know that, hey, look, these are vulnerable moments for me, and what I don't want to do is I don't want to find myself in a relapse situation simply because I became so complacent that I got casual about the real trip ups that are out there. So all of those things are healthy. That's still healthy recovery, even at 7, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of recovery.
yeah. And the one thing I would say it still stands out to me is he's like, I'm not experiencing the same kind of growth I once was. Is you've hit a point that now you get to choose where you grow. You get to choose in which direction. If you want to pick up a new hobby, you can grow that way. If you want to dive into reading more self-help books like Mike does, you can go that way. If you want to grow your relationship with your children, with your spouse, your grandchildren, maybe your siblings, your parents, friends, you get to do that. If you want to learn something, maybe this is a question that was posed to me at work earlier today. If there was one thing that you could learn this year that you haven't learned before, what would that be? Maybe ask yourself that question. What is something I've always wanted to do, but I don't know how to do that? If you want to learn how to go scuba diving, maybe that's something you dive into and learn about how that happens and take the classes to get certified. That's still growth. It doesn't always have to be that I'm in a 12-step program. It doesn't mean that I'm in an addiction program. It doesn't mean I'm doing all these things. Growth can be so many different things. Now that you've hit this kind of, I don't know if I want to call it safety zone, but kind of this zone where it's okay to start looking at other things to do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of the point,
Yeah.
right, of recovery, isn't it? I mean, it's really just a way to start learning and living in a very healthy way.
Yes.
So if you're doing it right, you will come to a point where these are the kind of questions that you're asking, and as long as what you're doing makes you more than what it's costing you, as long as it's a healthy thing that's making you better, then it almost doesn't matter what you do. If you do it deliberately and in a mindset of, I'm going to do this, and this is part of my recovery, to do it deliberately like that can change. I mean, even if you did exactly the same thing, I could go through my day very complacently, and then I could go through my day and do exactly the same things. But if I were doing them deliberately and consciously, it would be a very different result at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I have enjoyed this discussion. I think we have, and I really appreciate Kevin. I think we all really appreciate anybody who emails. But thank you, Kevin, for sending this in, because I think it's fascinating, because at least in my mind, it's even addressed some of the issues of my own. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and close.
Yep.
Kevin, if you've got some follow-up, please feel free to email us, and we'll see if we can address some other specific questions. But
Yeah, we would love to know what you come up with to solve this problem.
yeah, that's great. So this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.